Hey everybody, it's Renato, and welcome to another edition of Spill the Petals. And my guest today is Chief Executive Officer for the Society of American Florists, Kate Penn. And I don't know if you guys know this, but she's no stranger to me, and I'm no stranger to her. We worked together at Society of American Florists, I would say, for more than 20 years.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
She was there obviously before me, and I do consider her my big sister in this industry. And she has served as a friend, mentor, colleague, and all of the above. So I'm just supremely happy that you're our guest today. And in case you noticed the sign in the back, full disclosure, we are doing this podcast at the Florida State Florist Association, and of course, Kate is attending this event as well. So welcome to Jacksonville, Kate.
Thank you. Thank you. It's fun to be here. And I love that you referred to me as your big sister, because I have also referred to you as my brother from another mother.
Yes, I do recall that reference. So, it's a term of endearment. So I really do appreciate it, because I do consider you a very good friend. And I'm glad that we've been able to literally grow up in this industry together.
I know. Yeah. It's great. And I remember when you got that opportunity at BloomNet, many people said, "Oh my gosh, you must be so devastated that you're losing Renato." And really, I was just so glad you were staying in the industry, because I knew you would keep doing amazing things for our industry.
I appreciate that.
So we're lucky to have you.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. Well, we're going to get right down to business. So the Kate talks to everybody, literally, because Society of American Florists is the umbrella organization, in case you didn't know, for the entire industry. So not only are retail florists our members, but we have wholesale florists, flower growers, industry suppliers, educators, you name it. They're usually a member of the Society of American Florists. And if you're not a member, please consider joining. A wonderful organization. But being in that wonderful position of literally being the nexus of the industry, a lot of information flows through SAF and Kate. So today we're going to focus on some of those conversations that you've been overhearing this summer right now. It's like we're literally just a little bit over past the middle of the year. We're in the heat of the summer, and usually summer is a slow time for our industry. So the first question I wanted to ask is it slower than usual, or is it better than usual? We'll start with the retailer perspective.
That's a great question. And I can answer that anecdotally based on what I'm hearing from people that we're talking to, that we're listening to, as well as based on a recent survey that we did of all of our members. We do a survey twice a year, in January and June, called...
So great timing.
Yeah, great timing. This is perfect timing. We sent it out July 1st, so the beginning of the year and mid-year, and it's called the Economic Outlook Survey. And we ask people literally that. How is business? How's it going? How is it compared to last year? And so the answer to that great question is year-over-year sales for more than half of the industry right now, based on the response to our survey. More than half of the industry are off of last year.
Okay,
they are lower than last year, which is not particularly surprising, because you have to think about the 2 years that preceded it. Those were our industry experienced this incredible increase for most businesses in sales, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure you heard that from your members. And so it was a big, beautiful time for the industry. The consumer had more time to enjoy our product. They were missing out on all those family gatherings. And so we saw this incredible boost in business. And as great as it was, we also knew it wouldn't last forever, because some of that business was because of people being locked down and not being able to go to family events. So to a certain extent, it's not surprising that business was off for about half. A more, or at least just as important number to look at is, how is business now compared to 2019?
Yeah.
If you think about that, it's before COVID.
Before COVID. So you guys are taking that COVID out of that variable out of this equation,
right?
And making the comparison to
right. And that is what I would encourage everyone to look at if you're looking at your numbers. So when we asked that, the majority of our respondents said The business is up over 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and so that's good. So that means that some of those new flower buying habits stuck. In some cases, we also look at units, as I'm sure most people do in their business. You want to look at sales, but also units. For some people, their units aren't up, just the sales are up. So that's definitely a reflection of increased costs. You're having to charge more. Our industry should be charging more for its product. Many people have said that. So some of the sales increase compared to 2019, and even for those who had an increase compared to last year, it's because they're having to charge more for product, but units might be off. And then it's a smaller percentage who are experiencing this, but there are those who actually are up over last year, units and dollars. So that's
a difference.
Well, so I could sell, let's say I sold, 50 bouquets for $75 one year, and then the next year I sell 50 bouquets, but for $100. So I was
AOV
up on dollars. Yeah,
gotcha.
Average order value. Yeah, so average order values for many are going up, but they aren't selling more. And then for some florists, both are up. So they're actually selling more. So they have seen an increase in units and purchases and in AOV, which is, of course,
great to hear.
Great. Yeah, so for some, it's a smaller percentage. It's more like, I think it's between 15 and 20% that experience that. But that is happening as well. It really depends on the business, and there are a lot of factors that can dictate.
And I think we'll talk about that in just 1 second. But I wanted to continue the track of how people are doing. How about the wholesalers and growers, and those segments of the industry?
So wholesalers and growers, this is the exact data on wholesalers and growers. That those numbers that I was just sharing, that's all three segments together.
Okay, gotcha.
Right,
okay,
and so wholesalers and growers, we do have that. I don't have that cross-reference off the top of my head right now, but
well, that's good news. I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought you were focusing strictly on retailers, but that's the industry as a whole.
Right, right. The experiences are different, though. For instance, if you look at growers probably have had the highest cost increases. If you talk to a grower, they're going to talk about how much more expensive their inputs are, meaning the materials they have to use to grow their product, everything from the peat moss they have to buy to the crop protection materials that they have to buy. It's gone through the roof. And a lot of that, some of that is because of the situation in Ukraine. So their cost increases are disproportionately higher than the rest of the industry. So some of your growers, they're going to be talking about profitability. And
that's been persistent, right? Those pricing or those cost challenges,
right?
But those cost challenges for the growers,
right? And they have to absorb some of those. They can't pass all of those along. Yeah. So growers, if you're talking about their net profits, they're having a tougher time. They're trying to get through this period, right? Their net profitability isn't as strong, and so it is important to know if you see the price of your product going up, your fresh product. For starters, we haven't had a lot of cost increases, price increases in a long time. This industry, some would say we haven't done it enough,
right?
And so they have to just, the suppliers need to do it because we need them to stay in business, right? So,
but getting back to a point that you made about the increasing AOVs, I mean, a lot of the more successful retailers are definitely pricing their units up,
right?
Because they do need to cover those costs, but they also understand that. We can't keep those prices low. Like there's no margin for any of our florists, right?
Right. Yeah.
So just shifting into have you seen any trends in terms of business practices that have been successful? So getting back to your statement about how a lot of folks are increasing AOV, are increasing units. How are they doing it? Like what business practices have you seen or heard?
That's a great question. The types of things that we're hearing are an increased spend in marketing. So in driving people to your website, increased spend, especially in digital marketing. Okay. So and maybe that's in pay-per-click. We're also hearing people just putting more of an emphasis, or for some folks, the first time an emphasis on their social media marketing. They realize they have to do it. And for some, they're not
both organic and paid?
Organic and paid. Some are just doing organic because that's what they have the means to do. So for the first time, I've heard florists say, I finally am dedicating either a piece of my time or someone on my staff to really upping our social media presence, because it doesn't cost, there's no out-of-pocket cost. So on organic marketing, there's no out-of-pocket cost, and it does pay off. And other people, I talked to florists after Mother's Day that did really well this year, and they said for several, they really increased their paid search. They said, we just had to buy market share.
So we're talking Google ads, right? And
exactly.
Bing ads and all that.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I'll just throw it out there, but there are a lot of florists that may be under the belief that they can't necessarily compete with larger marketers out there. You know what I'm talking about. Are you experiencing some of that where some florists are saying, oh, you know what, I can't compete with them? And I disagree with that. I'll be honest. I mean, that's where I stand on it, because I feel like you have to invest some dollars, in your market in order to appear at least higher on that SERP page than usual. But do you find that florists are sharing that sentiment, that they feel that they can't compete with larger marketers?
I do hear that sometimes. Sometimes I feel like SAF can be in a little bit of a bubble, because the people that we're talking to all the time are on our boards and our council members, and some of them are larger businesses, and so and they're already inclined toward investing in that. We are just seeing more people trying it for the first time. That's the big difference I've seen over the last years. People said, we have never done paid search, and now we're doing it. And you won't really know if it works until you try it, right? Yes. And the level of entrepreneurialism that we're seeing in the industry right now is really exciting, and meaning trying new things and seeing if they work. Don't determine an idea is not going to work before you've tried it. That's what we're hearing. We're giving this a shot. We're trying this. If it fails, then we'll try something else. So we're seeing a lot of that right now, and it's pretty exciting. And I think COVID gave people the space to really think deeper and more critically about their business and how they're going to drive growth.
Well, you had some time in your hands, and people weren't walking in the door. So, what was the only means to get people exposed to your business?
Right.
That was digital. So, yeah, you're right. We're hearing stories like that all the time from the BloomNet network. A lot of those success stories. But I wanted to dig a little bit more into the social aspect. We promote video as a medium all the time. Are you hearing that from SAF members as well? That video is a good pathway to get more engagement and more relevance on search and all that.
Right. It is, absolutely. And I hear some retailers, they don't know how to get started because they've never done it. And I think the retailers that are doing it, they either have a partner that's helping with them, or they have someone on their staff that they've said, or they've brought someone on their staff, even if it's part-time, and tasked them with that and said, figure it out. A lot of owners are realizing if they don't have the bandwidth to do it themselves, they have to find someone who does, because you can't not do it. You can't not do it.
That's amazing that you're sharing that retailers are making a purposeful effort to invest into somebody or a role to strictly do all things digital, be it paid ads or social. So that's good. That's great to hear.
Right. Yeah. Because it actually, it's just right now made me think about this great advice that someone gave to me when I came into this role as CEO, which was 5.5 years ago. Marvin Miller from Ball Horticultural, he was on SAF's board at the time, and he said, and I remember it was my first board meeting that I had, which happened to be my second or third day as CEO, and I asked the board, I wanted everyone to share advice for me. What advice do you have for me in this role? And Marvin said, Dr. Miller said, know what you're good at and know what you're not good at. And so the reason I mention that is because in some senses for retailers, if you say to yourself, well, I'm not good at social, I never do social, I can't do this, then that's good to know that. But find someone who is good at that. Because Marvin's point was, if you're not good at it, you just need to find someone who is. Yeah, exactly. And so, and I think that is so relevant with social. And I think for retailers, it's very natural for them to recognize that if they're not a numbers person, then they've got an accountant, or they hire, a third party to help them out with that. They recognize that. But social media, marketing is also could fall into that as well. It's not optional. It's part of your marketing plan. So
sage advice, Dr. Miller.
Right.
Well, Dr. Miller, I'm sure you'll be viewing this because I'm going to tag you. And, well, heck, I'm going to email you right away and just say, hey, you're on our podcast. You were mentioned in the podcast. So it's July and the SAF Convention is coming up. So I be it that you guys are very progressive with the programming that you want to try to catch a lot of these wonderful trends and address these challenging issues. Do we have programming that florists and other industry members could take away that they could learn a few of these things?
We definitely do. We have programming that speaks to all of these things, both big picture changes that people are wanting to make in their business. For instance, we have this program, I think it's called Operational Shifts, that will change your life and your business. And that's someone who's talking about how they've deployed EOS. Are you familiar with that? I can't remember what it sounds.
EOS.
Entrepreneur. It stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System.
Okay.
And it's one of these systems that helps you streamline the way you operate, be very strategic. And so that's kind of a big picture, but operational piece. Because we are coming out of this period where people are recognizing the need to change their business in order to stay relevant and profitable. So that's kind of big picture operational. We have several programs related to marketing. We have a program on how to stand out in this very crowded digital landscape.
Right.
We've got another program focused on AI, and a lot of it's going to be AI as it pertains to your marketing, but also other parts of your operation. We also are looking a lot at your team, because your team, you're only as successful as your team.
Oh, in terms of like the chemistry or the
chemistry development, for instance, there's one session that's focused on how to keep your team focused on your goals, how to communicate your business goals, keep them focused on them, give them tools to keep them focused on it, how to assess your team so that to see if they're meeting your goals. I mean, those are just 3 of the sessions. I think we have 20 or 22 different sessions.
Wow.
For them. Right.
Yeah, lots of options there.
Right. A lot of options that are packed into those 3 days. We also have an optional retail tour. We're visiting a couple of retailers in Phoenix.
Like I did that at the Next Gen in Miami, and then that's always a special treat because you could pick their brains and the owner of the retail establishment get some best practices from that.
Right. I don't think anyone ever goes into a really cool retail shop without learning something.
Exactly.
Even if you're just looking at the displays or the cooler.
And that's the feedback I got back from retailers on the tour, that there's always something that they learn. I hope I don't put you on the spot, but do you know the retailerists that
we're going to Arizona Family Florist and Cactus Florist, Cactus Flower Florist. Okay. Yeah. Nice. Eric Luoma.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I know that.
Right. Yeah. So those are the 2 that we're visiting, and so we haven't done retail tours before. So So we're excited about that, and we also there's also a lot of networking opportunities, and we do these fun, almost like little pop-up educational things on our breaks. We have half-hour breaks between the session, and then we'll have a pop-up where it'll be in the corner where maybe 25 or 30 people will stand around and see an educational session that's short. You've done those before.
Yeah. And there's a lot of great standing around sessions. There's always a crowd happening at SF, and then sometimes if you don't necessarily know the schedule, you kind of pop your head in there and you're like, oh, this is really interesting.
Right.
And you do learn something.
Right.
So,
and what we've learned from working with our industry over the years is that it's not an industry that really likes to sit down for long periods of time. We learned that the hard way. We used to have, our sessions used to be 90 minutes and gradually we learned that's too long. We have to make them shorter than that. So ours are usually they're an hour now. And so those 20-minute sessions we know people love because our industry is not used to sitting down for such long periods of time. So we try, and every year we tweak the event. We add new things. We add in new things, take out what didn't seem to work well. And, we hope we hit it right.
Well, look forward to the SAF Convention, and please remind me of the dates.
It is September 6th through the 9th, and it's at the Westin Kierland Resort in Phoenix. Which I'm sure it won't be as hot in September as it is now.
Phoenix is a great location, but I mean, obviously, you're going to take away a ton of fabulous education and learnings and all the networking that you could do and learn from your peers and learn from other segments.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I get all the time in post conversation with folks that have attended convention, that, meeting your vendors or your partners is a big deal.
Right.
And, a lot of business happens there in addition to the knowledge exchange. So one last question, and this is going to be interesting because lots of the guests here are in the industry, but you have this wonderful third-party perspective as being a knowledge source. Is there an insight that you could pass on to fellow industry members that you've attained in your years as just being in the industry?
Oh, wow. So, well, everything that I would pass along is definitely what I've soaked in from our industry. I can speak to something that is really more recent, I would say, that is in this mode that we've gone through, this economy that we've gone through this year, where inflation has been high and it's been a challenge. And we've been sharing a lot of ideas in our content on how people are cutting costs, right? And you have to watch your costs, obviously. So you have to try and be as lean as you can, look at your labor costs. People are doing that. Whereas 1 and 2 years ago, people were hoarding containers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Actually, I wish not to take this on a bunny trail, but I really wish that over the last 2 years of visiting shops that I had taken photos of all of the container hoarding, because it would have made such a funny reel, like to show where people were storing containers in their stores. People got really creative with storage. Anyway, we're not doing that anymore. And in fact, people are, you're looking at your cash flow. So we're hearing people are not, they're not ordering quite as much at once. They're really wanting to make sure that they have very little waste. And so that all makes sense. And they're making some cutbacks in some areas. But one piece of advice I've heard over the years from so many successful businesses in our industry is, while you do have to watch costs, you can't cut your way to greatness. And many business people have said this. It's not like that just came from our industry, but you can't cut your way to greatness. And so you have to invest in growth. And that's what businesses that are growing are doing that. And the other piece is just keep in mind what our industry brings to the world too. Never lose sight of that. The business owner, your team, our product does make the world a better place, not to sound trite, but it does. And there's value in that. And make sure your teams know that, because it's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful industry to be a part of. And even though we might experience a mini recession, I think is what Charlie Hall called it the other day.
Mini?
Yeah, he said he's projecting a short recession, brief recession near the end of the year and a little bit going into next year. But he said then the feds are going to decrease interest rates, and that's going to spur economic activity, and things will get better next year. I do still believe we're a recession-proof industry. So, I think we're going to be okay. Just keep on keeping on, right?
Keep on keeping on. Well, you heard it right here on Spill the Petals. Kate, thanks again for visiting Jacksonville and agreeing to do this podcast.
My pleasure.
Us. And friends, don't forget, there's no use crying over spilled petals. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.